Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we are going to have an absolute blast today because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, podcasting. and we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of, should you do a podcast or should you be a guest on a podcast? And so please join me in welcoming Lyndsay Phillips to our program today. Welcome, Lyndsay.
Howdy, howdy. I'm so glad to be here across the border and a fellow cat lover.
I know. We were talking about cats before the program, and you are in Canada. So, we'll forgive you if you say, eh.
I won't.
Well, and it's funny because I'm down here in Atlanta, and every once in a while I do get a y'all out there, but
that's hilarious.
But not too often. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will really dive into this because you're going to have so much great information. We want to make sure we get it all in. So Lyndsay Phillips is the CEO and captain of Smooth Sailing Business Growth. She is your content marketing strategic partner, a serial entrepreneur, and also proud owner of Smooth Business Podcasting and Real Estate Investors Marketing. Growing a successful content marketing agency, launching her own podcasts and clients, she quickly learned the true power of podcasting. Skeptical at first and scared of putting herself out there, her do it anyway attitude paid off, and her business has grown 60% each year consistently. Lyndsay has been featured on MSN, NBC, Fox. She's been published in Huffington Post. She's guested on podcasts like John Lee Dumas's Entrepreneurs on Fire and Joe Fairless' Best Podcast Ever. She has shared her expertise at events such as Dream Business Academy, Podfest, which included the Guinness World Records one, and Service Business Edge, sharing the stage with Michalowicz.
That's a hard one.
I know. There we go. I just butchered his poor name. And Jay Abram. Lyndsay loves helping entrepreneurs build their authority and increase visibility through the power of podcasting with her full service podcasting and content marketing services. Whew. Like I said, we are going to have so much fun. One of the things that I love is finding out more about my guests. And so tell us how you got to where you are today and how you discovered that, especially helping with podcasts and helping people get them launched, be guests on them, all those various things, is your passion in life.
I know. I always find it interesting, people's stories of how they got where they are, because you see people through a certain lens, right?
Right.
Oh, they had instant success. That is not the case. I had my own business years ago when I lived on the other side of the country, exporting vehicles to the States, and then moved to Ontario, and the dollar went kaput. And so I went back to working for other people. And once my kids were small, I was like, I was making $11 an hour, working for somebody else, running their marketing business. And I did a lot of sales and I hated it. And I'm like, I'm smarter than this. I could do my own thing. And I want to be home with the kids, right? And carve my own life.
Right.
And so a friend of mine was doing VA work, so virtual assistants, and making great money. And I'm like, I would totally love to work from home.
Setting your own schedule, all of those things.
I know. And not have the expense of this, that, and the other, and driving. And so dabbled in it and did it on the side and loved it, and took online courses to learn more. And I just loved it. I mean, especially the creative aspect of content marketing, and just being able to be at home and wear yoga pants.
Right.
And so after a while, I was burning the candles at both ends. I was doing that online. I was doing that job at another one. And I'm like, okay, am I in or out?
Mhm.
And so I actually quit the other jobs
Mhm.
and I got a client. And
Mhm.
so I was fine. My daughter was still young. And then just kind of grew organically from there doing VA work.
Mhm.
So that was when I was smooth sailing online support.
Okay.
And then as I got into it, I just loved the content marketing aspect of
Mhm.
it versus like the admin stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there were things that I started to hate. And I was getting really great results for my clients with the content
Mhm.
marketing, email marketing, sales funnels, all that good stuff,
Mhm.
videos. And even a friend of mine was kind of like, you're doing like everything. It's hard to even understand like what you do. Do you know what I mean?
Ah. Mhm.
And
The
I'm like,
jack
oh,
of all trades type of.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm like, interesting. And then I thought, oh, but can I turn clients away? Like,
Mhm.
this actually was a huge lesson. And then
Mhm.
I'm like, I can't say no. I can't turn people away.
Mhm.
But I was really starting to hate the admin part. And
Mm.
so I just bit the bullet
Mhm.
and niched down and just went strictly to content marketing
Mhm.
and rebranded. I started saying no to potential clients.
Mhm.
And I even fired a client that I
Yikes.
didn't love.
Mhm.
And it was scary as all heck, but as
Mhm.
soon as I did it, I got like a flood of new clients within
Right.
a matter of like 6 weeks.
Mhm.
It was crazy.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you feel this way too, Deb, but it's like when you make a decision and you step forward,
Mhm.
even though it's scary, it's just like the world
Right.
says like, yep, here you
Okay.
go.
Here's what you're gonna do. Mhm.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And then of course I had to revamp all my systems because I was too overwhelmed.
Mhm.
Like, how do I deal with all this new
Mhm.
stuff and new clients? And I had to hire 2 new people. And so, I mean, I was pulling my hair out. It was really, really stressful, but it did help me with the lesson of having to have systems
Mhm.
in place and procedures and processes. So it's like sometimes you got to go through the crap to get to
Mhm.
the good.
Right. And you need to understand what all it takes.
Yeah, I know. And so it was painful, but I got out the other end. And then I had a business coach
Mhm.
and was in the masterminding world, which
Mhm.
was such a huge help.
Mhm.
And so he was like, you got to get a podcast, Lindsay. You
Mhm.
got to do videos,
Mhm.
Lindsay. And I'm like, no,
Not more stuff.
I know. Well, that I was just petrified. Like, I was good behind the scenes,
Mhm.
doing my thing, but like to be live and talk to
Mhm.
other people and do videos, I was absolutely
Mhm.
petrified.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I know I got to put myself out there. So I launched podcast and
Mhm.
videos. And I mean, you know this, podcasting is not like an instant results game, right?
Right. Mhm.
It takes time. So after, doing the podcast and being consistent with it, obviously I got better over time. The first
Mhm.
couple episodes, they
Oh
sucked.
yeah. Oh,
And
ew,
you got
those
to know
first
that
ones.
going in,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
You're like, it's not going to be perfect
Mhm.
right off the cuff. And so I got over myself and started to feel more comfortable.
Mhm.
And gradually, it's like people were like, oh man, you're everywhere. You're on
Mhm.
this show. You've got these guests.
Mhm.
I was making great connections with
Mhm.
people, which I love.
Mhm.
That's the fun part of podcasting, which I wasn't anticipating. And then started getting more like referrals and contacts and
Mhm.
leads. And it opened up so many doors for like
Mhm.
speaking on stage and
Mhm.
taking part in summits. And yeah, and it just up levels your whole business
Mhm.
and your credibility and your authority. And like I went into it kind of knowing that, but really
Mhm.
not realizing the full
Mhm.
potential. And then I started, obviously I had my team doing all the back end
Mhm.
production stuff and the promotion. And then a client's kind of like, well, can you do that for me? And I'm like,
Yeah. Hmm.
sure.
Mhm.
And then, so again, got a system in
Mhm.
place, started doing it for some clients.
Mhm.
And then just podcasting grew. And
Mhm.
I enjoy it so much and I see
Mhm.
the potential of it.
Mhm.
And so now do podcast launches and
Mhm.
production and obviously leveraging it and promoting it.
Mhm.
And again, it's scary sometimes to niche down again,
Mhm.
but I just think it's so much more effective to become an authority when you
Mhm.
niche down.
Right.
And it's so much easier to market your
Right.
business.
Yeah. We can't be everything to everyone. And I
No,
think that's, from the marketing perspective, that's what we tell people.
I
You
know.
have to find your niche, and of course people are like, oh my God, but all those people that we're missing,
I
all those people that
know.
you're missing probably didn't want your service anyway.
Yeah, or they're not willing to pay
Mhm,
you
mhm.
what your
Right. Right.
value,
Hmm.
because you're not being portrayed
Hmm.
as an authority or an
Hmm.
industry leader.
Hmm.
So you're just going to get these like ones and twosies, or
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
lower level clients, I guess, for lack of better
Hmm.
terms.
Well, and not repeat, they just come in,
Yes.
they do it once and they're gone.
Yes, that's so true. Yeah. So, I mean, I always tell people, I mean, niching down is
Hmm.
absolutely critical
Hmm.
to your growth and just building your
Hmm.
authority, because there's so much competition out there, right? And
Hmm.
it's noisy. Like,
Hmm.
there's so much going on in social and what have you. So, you need to find a way to stand out of the
Hmm.
crowd and really go after a specific market,
Hmm.
because then all of your ideal clients will find you,
Right.
because they see you
Hmm.
everywhere, and
Hmm.
then they just know who to go to.
Hmm.
So it honestly helps you grow
Hmm.
faster.
Right. And it's interesting to see how much podcasting has grown. Podcasting and video. I mean, kind of the combination of, but I think especially last year with the pandemic,
Yeah.
down here in the States, at least, we had so many people who weren't getting their message out there. Maybe
Mhm.
they were used to speaking, maybe they were used to giving
Yes.
presentations. And so they went, maybe
Network.
I should get into podcasting, whether hosting or being a guest. So I think things really took off last year.
Yeah, I agree. You could definitely see the influx
Mhm.
and people launching, and honestly, even people just getting into the
Mhm.
podcast industry
Right.
of like editing and
Mhm.
all those
Mhm.
moving parts. You could see that kind of growing, and
Right.
guest booking
Mhm.
services that are popping up,
Mhm.
and what have you,
Mhm.
but a little bit more competition, but whatever.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, as everything grows, that's okay.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, you mentioned editing. I had a guest on several months ago who just turned 20. And he has a podcast editing business that is 7 figures.
Oh my God.
I know. And I mean, he was an absolutely delightful young man, and, but incredibly intelligent. I mean, he
Yeah.
knew what he was going for. And one of the services that he offered, and we'll talk about this as part of the ways to use your podcast in multiple ways, is they do transcription. And so I was curious, and I said, so who does your transcription? And I was figuring he was going to say offshore, thing, because a
Mhm.
lot of things like that really can be
Yep.
done offshore. His college buddies.
Oh my God. Isn't that awesome?
And I just thought, oh, okay, I need to keep this young man's contact, because at some point he's
Oh
going to be one of
yeah.
those big movers and shakers. Yeah,
Totally.
he saw that need. And he said, people, they either don't want to edit, they don't know how to edit,
No.
and then they certainly don't know how to transcribe. And my earpiece just came apart. And so I can't hear you. This is fun. So we're just going to keep going, and reconnect me here.
Yep.
But yeah.
But yeah, there's so many different
There we go.
facets of the
Don't you
business,
love
right? Like
almost
between
live?
show notes and branding and editing and
Hmm.
promotion and
Hmm.
launches and your message. And I knew someone that was just a podcast brander, like
Hmm.
for branding. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh, that's a thing,
Right.
like branding just for a
Oh yeah.
podcast. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
I didn't think there would be a huge need for that, but
No.
you never know.
Yeah. And or getting people, just starting, that's one of
Mhm.
the things people ask me is, what equipment do I need?
I
And
know.
and that really is, just kind of some of the basics. But it's like with doing any of it, you have to figure that out. And so that's where it's great to be able to have all these various services, because let's be honest, I started this a long time ago. I mentioned in the pre-show, your program's 683. I've been doing this a long time, and
Yes.
I had to figure a good portion of it out on my own.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is I'm still learning.
There's new
There's
software,
yeah.
there's new automation
Oh,
tools coming out
I
all the
know.
time.
I know. I had a guest on a week or so ago, and he had 3 different cameras. And during the podcast, he's switching. And I mean, and I was just fascinated with this because they
Dang.
faded in. I mean, it wasn't
That's
just
high
him
tech.
switching. Well, and so we had 2 different angles on his face, and then we had a far away shot. And I mean, it was just the coolest thing in the world. And he
That
said,
is
okay, he
fancy.
doesn't normally do that for podcasting. He trains speakers, and he's especially working with speakers who are now having to do this virtually. And we get really tired of watching the talking head. And so he does this whole different camera angle. And I was just like, oh my God, I want to do this. You know, and I'm like the kid with the new toy. Oh, let's do that.
I know. That is cool though.
But yeah, I mean, there really are, you know, if you're just starting out, whether you're having your own podcast or whether you're being a guest or both, I mean, there are some basics. You know, the first thing is you do have to have good internet. I mean, that's kind of the, and I've had guests that, you know, haven't, you know, I've interviewed people in campgrounds. That's always fun. You know, all sorts of things, but yeah, you have to have good internet and you have to have good sound. I mean, you know, that really is the key. Now I've got the, you know, for those who are listening, I've got a big Blue Yeti mic. It just happens to be the mic that I prefer.
They don't have to be that expensive.
No,
I've got my,
yeah, you've got a nice mic. Yeah, I mean, for under $150, you can get a good mic. If you prefer a headset, I tell people, you know, get one that obviously, you know, especially if you want to do a headset with a mic. Gaming ones are the ones that I have found are really good because, you know, you're in that virtual world and they need good sound, they need good speaker. And so a gaming headset works really well. And again, $100-ish. You know, and so that works really well. But yeah, you have to have good audio. You know, and then you and I, we are doing this with video. So you do have to have a good camera. But yeah, if you're, you know, there are just as there are lots that are still not video. It makes it nice, even if you're not recording it, to do video, because then we are just chatting.
Totally.
But you know, in this day and age of Zoom, who doesn't have a camera?
Everyone does. Absolutely. It's funny though, how people like, oh, they're starting a podcast and they fixate on what equipment they need.
Right.
Whereas like, there's so much more, like what is your message?
Right.
What is the podcast name? What is the point? And even like the systems, like what are you going to do when you have a guest? Right. And like your scheduling and the emails that you send them and the timing of things and how are you going to promote it and what directories are you going to use? Like there's so many moving parts, but it as soon as someone wants to launch a podcast, the only thing they think about is what equipment and what mic.
Right. Yeah. And it
that
is,
to me is like, it's not important yet.
well, and we do have a lot of that stuff. I mean, you know, I've had guests who have used their iPhone. You know, it's pretty hard to tell that they were not using a very expensive camera and mic. You know, but yeah, you know, are you going to do an RSS feed? Are you going to submit to iTunes? You know, what are the graphics? I mean, all of those various things. Most important, you know, or not most importantly, one of the big things, who's going to host it? You know, that's one of the things that I struggled with was, okay, you know, I've got this and I'm just going to record it and have this big file. And then what the heck do I do with it? I know. And it's like, you know, there's places that host this. And of course, the cool thing is when you use a podcast host, they take care of a lot of that stuff. So like you get an RSS, what is I can never remember what RSS is, real simple syndication. Yes, good job. Like I knew syndication was in there somewhere. I know. And so that's what then goes to iTunes and all of those things. It's just that little magical. Yeah, you set it up once PC and part. It just like populates it all. Yeah, you record it and goes. I don't submit, you know, every single time to all of those places. It just goes. And you know, those can be inexpensive. They can be more expensive. I mean, a variety of things. Because my program is an hour, I do have to pay more because I need more bandwidth. For the bandwidth. Yeah. But if you're doing, you know, like one of the 15 minutes, then, you know, then you might not need that. You also, obviously, if you're just guesting, you don't need to worry about this at all. No. But you do want to, that is something to kind of check into though, when you're wanting to be a guest. do they have that? I mean, is their program on iTunes? Is it on Spotify? Is it on all of those various things? Because if you're taking your time to get your message out there, you want to make sure it's actually getting out there.
I know. And I've discovered too, being on a lot of podcasts more so this year than previous years, is that it amazes me how many podcast hosts there are. And they're like, there's things that they are or are not doing. Like some won't email their list. Some don't have it on their website. Some don't create show notes. Some haven't created images.
Right.
And I'm like, ooh, like you're taking that time to create that podcast. Like you want to leverage it and share it everywhere and showcase it as best you can. So honestly, I've made the stuff up and given it to them because I'm like, I'm using it for my site and stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Here's how I'm going to promote my appearance.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. I was on a podcast earlier this week with folks from C-Suite Network. And one of the things they talked about was, iTunes is obviously the big guy on the block, and probably will be for maybe forever, who knows. But the stat that they said was 38% of all podcasts on iTunes have just one episode. 38%. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you took the time and the effort to do a lot of that. And then you did it once. But I know somebody who did that. It was harder than he thought it was going to be. And so,
more costly than they thought.
Oh yeah.
I've had so many people where they've done like a handful and then they're like, oh, I don't have instant results and it's costing more than it's worth and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh man, like you had to have gone in knowing the costs.
Right.
And then it's like, it's a long game. It's not a short, it's not like a Facebook ad where you get a conversion.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned was knowing why you're doing it. People are always asking me, why do you do your podcast? I meet really cool people.
Yeah.
Out of this, nearly 700 programs, there's maybe been 2 where I thought, but that was just, we didn't click. I mean, they were fabulous people.
Everybody.
Yeah. And so I'm making connections. I'm not on, now I go on other people's podcasts to get business, but my podcast, does it get me some business? Sure. And it is nice to be able to say I have an internationally known podcast.
Yes.
But but I know that that's the reason that I'm doing it, is to make those connections and to get information out there and kind of be that resource.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And as you stated when we started this podcast episode, it's like some people have that question of like, should I have my own show? Should I be a host? Should I co-host? Should I just me talk? Or should I guest? And it's like, to me, I'm like, it all depends, right? Like, what are your goals? If it's lead gen, where that's your main goal, then you're probably better off being a guest on other people's shows, so that you can share, your lead magnets and have a funnel and so on and so forth. If you want to, grow your authority status or platform, guesting obviously is great, but also having your own show and having those connections, or having a show where it's just you talking, to share your expertise and your knowledge and your strategies. But even I've actually had some podcasters where they only interview people that are in their local area. So say they're like a website development.
Oh, okay.
So they've had people on their show that are local. And so it makes them feel like a superstar for being on air. And really, it's like that podcaster, the host, it's their foot in the door to get their business. Right. So the podcast is actually more of a sales strategy than anything else. So you really need to think about, like, do I need to grow my leads? Do I need to build more relationships? Do I need to build my authority, visibility? And it's funny because some people too, Deb, which you probably hear is like, oh, I want to make money off of my podcast.
Right.
And like,
unless you're a John Lee Dumas, probably not going to happen.
It's just not realistic. Down the road, maybe. And also there are more than one way, there's more than one way of monetizing your
Right.
podcast than just sponsorships and the ads. Like, you know, like I monetized my podcast in regards to the funnels that I had and the follow-ups and the relationships where I got referrals and I got clients and I grew my e-list that converted. So there's different ways of thinking about the whole monetization game, but sometimes people do have that unrealistic expectation of, oh, I'm going to have a podcast, I'm going to have like a bazillion downloads and I'm going to make all the sponsorship money that'll cover the cost. Where it's just, you're going in it for the wrong reasons if that's the case.
Right. You know, and you know, part of that is figuring out who your market is, you know, and all of those various things. And then, like, as you said, being realistic. You know, there are so many podcasts that to hit some major numbers, you know, might not happen there. You know, it certainly does for some people.
Yeah.
But for others, you know, if you have, and I think the average, you know, and I look this up every time and then it goes out of my brain again. The average for all podcasts is like 100 downloads a month.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm at 5,000 for the year. So I figure, hey, I'm doing really pretty good. But at the same point, you know, there is that little part of me that goes, that's only 5,000. Right.
But it's also, are your listeners engaged?
Yes.
And are they loyal? And are they reaching out? And are they commenting? So that's, you know, I would rather have 100 or whatever engaged listeners that are my ideal clients that I can potentially convert versus thousands that are just like flying in the breeze and they're like, they're not my ideal client.
Yeah. It's exactly like blogging or using social media. You know, you might have 10,000 fans, but if 2 of them comment, you know, do you really have 10,000 fans? You know, and so, yeah, I mean, the numbers and, you know, the numbers on podcasts, it gets a little tricky sometimes to track some of those things. Part of that depends on your host, you know, and some things. I always have people now, give me your demographics. I'm like, you know, I can give some general you know, one of the things I can do like
gives
countries.
You some.
Yeah. You know, and I'm on Megaphone. And so I can tell countries, you know, I can tell where they're coming from. So the majority of my folks are from iTunes, you know, some things like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be able to say, well, my listeners are women ages 35 to 45.
I know.
And that's it. I find that when people who are thinking radio or because of course you get much better demographics there. I mean, you know, I'm an old PR person. And so, you know, we used to go to TV stations and radio stations and because of advertising, you got their demographics. Doesn't happen with podcasts.
No, at least too, if you're hosting it on your website and you have like posts, you can go to your Google Analytics and see how many visitors are going to those posts versus other pages on your site. So that would help. I know I also use Simple Podcast Press, and there's also Fusebox where the audio player has an actual opt-in in it. So that if someone's going to the post, there's more of an opportunity for them to convert to a lead, which is kind of handy. So, and if you track that opt-in specifically against if you have that opt-in somewhere else on Facebook, then you can kind of gather some of those numbers. And there's another couple of beta tools that are coming out. I don't know if you've heard of them. One is Audia and one is Verbal. There's probably some others. And basically they are like, one looks like YouTube and the other one kind of looks like a cross between YouTube and Spotify. And so you have your audio and what have you, but it allows you to search for like topics. So let's say like on YouTube, you can search for, I don't know, eyeliner, and then you get tips on how to apply eyeliner.
From like a 12-year-old, but
yeah, exactly. I don't know how that came to me, and then, so you can search for like, I don't know, a podcast monetization. And as opposed to where you normally would get shared, like what podcasts are about that, you are now getting shared episodes that are specific to that. And then you can create playlists just like you can on Spotify and YouTube. People can follow, comment just like YouTube. So it's still in the beta. But I just see like it's got such huge potential. So I'm thinking this way, you're able to engage more with your listeners because they can comment.
Right.
You can see who's like following your podcast. So I'm super excited about how that's going to grow.
Right. Right. And statistics, I remember when I took statistics in college a long time ago, but one of the things they told us was you can make statistics say what you want them to say. And because it's all in how you interpret, I mean, all sorts of things. When I was looking at my demos one time, I'm thinking, why on earth do I have so many listeners from California? And I must have looked at that statistic, several months and thinking, well, and then it finally dawned on me, Facebook, and so it was routing through Facebook when they were clicking on the link, and many of Facebook's servers are out in California. So that was why I had that.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. And, but then I get weird things like last month,
the data.
5% of my listeners were in Croatia. And I've had weird, and so, I'm sure some of this is where the servers are routing from, and the analytics just aren't sophisticated enough to go, okay, well, you went from here to here to here.
Yeah.
And so they can figure that out. But it is, it is interesting to kind of look at some of those numbers and see things. One of the things that I can pretty much look at and know for sure is about 30% of our listeners are outside the United States. I love that stat. And now we'll bounce up, obviously, when we have a guest like you, who is not in the United States and does a great job at promoting the program, because their networks are probably in the country where they're in. But yeah, that's kind of one of the things that I look at a lot is, well, where are my listeners? And it's funny because I've even asked, I've said, hey, I see I've got this big clump of people in Croatia. Email me and tell me why you're listening to no. So it's bizarre.
Yeah, it is interesting. And if you were able to narrow it down like within the US, then at least you could target some Facebook ads to like that specific area or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it'll within time, they'll have more capabilities.
Right.
Different features like Amazon just released, and Spotify, was it Spotify or iHeartRadio? I can't remember. But you're able to do paid podcast subscriptions now and to offer that. So like, let's say you had some exclusive content or you put packages together, you could put it up there. People have to pay it. So just another revenue stream. But I know one of them has limitations in regards to like, you have to have so many downloads or so many followers or so many something in order to take advantage of it. I'm like,
okay.
Always rewarding the top tier, you know what I mean? But it'll be interesting to see how many people will actually use those paid subscription features, how many people will actually pay for content. Like, like, would you pay to listen to a podcast? I guess it depends on who it is.
Depends on who it is.
Yeah.
But you did bring up something that I want to point out is that for most people, just a standard podcast, it doesn't cost to have them on iTunes. I mean, you do have to verify that you're not charging for it, as of right now. That's the thing. And same with all of the other streaming services. It doesn't cost to be on them. And I think that a lot of people assume, well, oh my gosh, if I'm going to be on iHeart, if I'm going to be on Spotify, all those things.
A whole nother setup.
Yeah. But it just takes that RSS number. I mean, that really is the critical part to it.
I know, it makes it so easy. And really you want to make sure that whether it's Libsyn or whatever host that you're using, that you are connecting to as many directories as you can. I get that question all the time. Should I do iTunes? Should I do Stitcher? I'm like, yes, do them all.
Yeah, all of them.
Because it doesn't cost you anything. And you want to make sure that you're in front of as many people as possible. So that people can find you. So it makes it super easy. Right.
The one thing that I have noticed, and this is on my host, I have to verify clean or not clean. In other words, what is the content? Does it have bad language? Because iTunes, that is one of the requirements for iTunes. And so I have had guests on, and bless their hearts, they swear like a sailor. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And now I've only ever in all this time, knock on wood, had one guest drop the F-bomb. And that was when we were still on live. And it was like, oh, and luckily he mumbled it. And I get this immediate text from my producer. And because, it was live. And so they were listening. And of course the guest caught it. And he was a professional. He knew he had done that. He texted me, he said, I'm sorry, I promise, and I'm like, that's fine. But yeah, so, but that's one of the things that I, have had guests ask about. They will say, I do swear. And I say, not on my program. Now I actually, I used a bad word on one a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But and I have had guests that I've turned down because I've told them, I know you can't not do that. But one of the funniest ones, I had a guest one time and he said, I use the F-bomb a lot. And I said, well, you can't, not on my program. I said, I do have to verify that you don't do that. And I mean, we were already starting, we hadn't started the program. We were in our pre-chat. And he said, hang on. And I hear, rustle, rustle, rustle. And then I hear giggle, giggle, giggle from obviously a small child. And it was the funniest thing in the world. He went and brought his 3-year-old daughter into the room, equipped her with a coloring book, things to keep her occupied. It gets back on and he tells me, I don't swear in front of her. Worked
like
perfect.
An instant switch.
Yep. That daddy doesn't say that word. And yeah, every once in a while we drop those words and so you can go through and in the editing process and take them out depending on what it is. But yeah, I mean, that's been one of the things I've had several people ask about. And there, I have actually had people who have self opted out because I tell them, no, I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, it's like, bizarre, but, and it is interesting if you're going to be a guest, and that is one of the services that you provide is helping people to be guests. And, at the end of the program, we'll have you really talk about that. But, there are some not rules. There are some guidelines that you should follow. And, it's always very interesting when people approach us that they don't want to follow our rules. And I'm like, okay, I've been doing this a long time. But I mean, there really are some basics and I love this. I'm watching the video and all of a sudden I got very fuzzy. I don't know what's going on in my world today.
I feel drunk.
I know. But I think one of the most unusual that I ever got was a firm that had pitched this guest to us, and we send a form and we say, here's what we need you to fill out. You filled it out. It asks for the basic stuff, your bio, your social connections, all those various things. And the response I got back from this person was, look it up yourself.
Oh my God.
And
who does that?
And I was like, oh my God. And my producer sends me the email and she says, how do I respond to this? And so I played bad cop. She gets to be good cop. I played bad cop. And so I responded and I said, no. I said, I do many of these
as a guest. You have to make it as easy as possible.
I know, and one of the things that you talk about that is an absolute must, and you have this is the one sheet, that gives a lot of that information, all those various things. But I mean, she didn't even provide that. I mean, she literally said, look it up. That's nuts. So I contacted her and I said, no. Yes, I research my guests. If they are an author, I read the book. I do all of those things, but there are basic things you must provide. But
even just to have that attitude, I'd be like, I'm not connecting with you.
Oh my gosh. But this guest was somebody that really sounded interesting. So, that was why I decided, okay, I'm going to, give her a second chance. And so she did fill out the form. She sent the information and, so I record the interview, the guest and I really hit it off. And I thought, this person needs to know what would happen. And so, when we're no longer recording, I said, I have to ask you, how long have you been with the agency? 6 months or so. And I said, have you been happy? And I said, and I was just trying to ask some general questions. And he said, well, I'm not getting as much as I want. I said, I think I know why.
Oh.
And I told him, and I said, now she gave me the information, but it took me 2 asks.
Yeah, no, that's not cool, especially for an agency to be doing that.
Yeah. But yeah, when you are guesting on somebody's program and they say, we need X, Y, and Z, then you need to give them X, Y, and Z.
I know.
Don't ignore them. Don't whatever, they have a reason they're asking for that.
Absolutely. And I've even, I do this for myself and my clients, is that we have like a press page. So on it is the bio, the topics, the
The
questions,
headshot.
the buttons for like downloading the one sheet and the headshot and just some other stuff, just to like, here's a link, super easy, right? You can get all the, like everything. So that's good. And then obviously having the PDF for the one sheet, but, and I also find for guests, like if you write down your interview topics and then even some questions that would prompt the host to ask, it just makes the host picture the show, right? Like, oh, I know what I would talk about. I know what I would ask. Obviously, you're going to spawn off of that more, but there's construction. Can you hear that?
You have construction and I have a camera that is doing the weirdest thing in the world.
Peachy.
I don't know what the heck is going on. I'm looking to make sure that it's not an autofocus thing that's all out of wonk, but it doesn't seem like that.
I know. You got to love real life and tech.
I know. Let me turn autofocus
but
on.
yeah, you want to make it as easy as you can for the host so that they, will make the best of the show.
Right. And I like asking about sample questions or getting them off of the one sheet because, I have a guest on so that because they're promoting a book, they're promoting services, things like that. And I want to make sure that I cover the things that they want to talk about. So that's why I say, give us 3 to 5 topics you want to cover. Does that guarantee that I'm going to cover it? No, but it does give me some ideas as to, what they want to do, because I do tend to be, the squirrel type of, oh, hey, let's talk about this thing. But, I've at least got an idea of what's important to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find too, going back to like podcasting and like, okay, you launch the podcast, you know whether you're going to be a guest or a host. And then what? Like I find that a lot of hosts or guests will share the episode once on social and then that's it. And then wonder why they're not getting a lot of viewers. It's like, man, there's so much good content in the episode. It's like leverage it, like email it to your list, create an article in LinkedIn, create posts. There's different blogging sites like Bigger Pockets or Medium. You can like post them there. If you do get the video version, you can put it in IGTV. Do audiograms, take out little tips and quotes. And there's so many different ways of leveraging and using that content. And then you're not like banging your head against a wall trying to create new content every week.
Yeah, you just had 30 minutes, an hour of great content.
Exactly.
But yeah, and we give our guests that option. I always tell them, and I think I forgot to tell you this, you may do whatever you would like with the content. You can download it, you can share it, you can edit, and that's part of why we don't have advertisers, because what happens is people would edit out the advertisers and then they get cranky with me. So, I just tell people, you can do what you want. If you just want to, get a 30-second clip that you're going to use on your website, that's fine. You have to give credit, some things like that. But yeah, we tell them. What really amazes me is the people who, as far as we can tell, never promote their guest at all. That they were on this program, and I always think, well, did they hate it that much? But, in the follow-up email that my producer sends, she even gives them a cut and paste. Here is how to promote it type of thing. So we have it set up so that we're tagged. I mean, all of those various things. And now they could be promoting it and just not tagging us. So that way, we're not catching it. But at the same point, it's like, why do this if you're not going to promote it? And maybe they didn't like it. I mean, that really is an option. But, I really am surprised at how many times guests don't. And then we've got those guests who you love dearly, who years after you had them on are still promoting it, right?
I know, I love that.
Yeah, it pops up in your feed, or if you've got Google, tracking things, you're like, oh my gosh.
Because it's evergreen content, right? Like it's awesome. And also, like, if you go back into your stats for like Libsyn or whatever your host is, and you see which episodes are getting the most traction, you can pick up like, ooh, people really love that topic.
Right.
But you can also like push out that promote that episode again, because it resonates. So it'll boost your downloads and just, getting new listeners or whatever. So using that kind of data is really useful too.
Right. And we do try and have evergreen content. And I remind my guests, don't say next week we're doing X promotion, some things like that. Or if we do, I just, tell them, be very specific about it. So, for the month of July, 2021, we're doing this. So that way, if somebody is listening to it, months in the future, they're not going to call and say, hey, I want that 10% off or whatever. But, and obviously things change. Every year I do an entire month of just LinkedIn. And I love doing that. We've been doing it for several years, but clearly things change, especially with social media. You tell people, fill out the summary section. Now it's the about section. I mean, some things like that, but people are smart. They figure those things out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to know your audience, right? Like, it's funny. Some people jump on like bandwagons and, I better get on TikTok and make things for TikTok. It's like, if your ideal client or your audience are not on TikTok, then why waste your time and effort?
Yeah.
Even actually, this is a good point. So even podcasting, right? Like if let's say your audience are, 70-year-olds and they're not tech savvy, and they probably don't listen to podcasts. If that's your ideal client, then don't start a podcast.
Right. Yeah.
You want to create content and be in places where your ideal client is hanging out, and invest your time and your money wisely.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have a YouTube page for the program, but I'll be honest, we know most people are not going to sit and watch an hour. We're not, some fancy TV program that people are going to binge watch. They listen in, when they're exercising, when they're in the car, all of those various things. They're not going to watch it. But I'm also a marketing person, and I know that the owner of YouTube is that little guy called Google. Actually, it's what, ABC, or an alphabet company. That's it. That's what Google is. And so it's for SEO. I mean, that's why we have that YouTube channel. But there are people who really do prefer to watch the video. And so that is why we have it there. But yeah, the vast majority of people are listening as opposed to watching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. As that did remind me about something, if you're launching a podcast, earlier we mentioned, what are the names, all those various things. Last year, during the middle of the pandemic, I decided to trademark the Business Power Hour, partially because there is another program with that same name. But I did have somebody that sent me a cease and desist because he has a service called Power Hour. Now, it's a service he charges. It's different, different industry. I mean, all sorts of things. So he had no legal grounds to stand on. But it did make me think, okay, the Business Power Hour probably should be trademarked, because if somebody else trademarked it, then they could come back at me and say, you have to take it out of everything. It's not just, hey, I trademarked it as of X date going forward. I would have had to have gone back and taken it out of everything. So I went through the process. It was not inexpensive, but it wasn't as expensive as I was expecting it to be. Now I did, I was thinking, okay, I be a smart cookie. I can do this myself. And so, I had thought, I can start. And so I started the process, there's, and you can Google it. It tells you how to do these things. And so, I send in my $75 and then I get back from the Federal Trademark Office all of these questions. And I went, oh,
Yeah.
no, don't know how to do this.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
I hired a trademark attorney and, she went through that process. And the trick was with mine, the, business, power, hour, those are all common terms.
Yes.
And so she had to go through and show that there really wasn't a lot of, there wasn't anything else that was using that term, all sorts of things. And so we got it. I mean, it is
it's
a
a big
federally,
process.
yeah. And now if it's, say, your name, you might not have to do that. But at the same point, you still might think about that. I mean, you might trademark your business name, so you,
Yeah, I was gonna say, if it's part of your
yeah,
brand, for sure.
protect it. Especially if it takes off and it's popular, because there are people out there who will borrow it.
Yes, I know.
And so you want to protect
that a lot
it
out there.
Yeah. And so you want to take those steps, and just do those things. But it is, to me, it's so much fun. But, I think one of the things that people are still maybe thinking is, Lyndsay, why should I do this? Why, especially, let's talk about the people who want to be a guest. Why should I be a guest? I'm scared. I've never done this before. It's just, when you're working with somebody, walk us through that process.
Honestly, I'm just like, you have to level up. You have to put yourself out there. You have to become the expert that you want to be, whether you feel like you're the expert or not. Like, you've got your own beliefs and what have you. You believe in your abilities, right? Like, whatever your sweet spot is, your superpower, your industry. Like when it comes to podcast launching, production, and promotion, I know my stuff.
Yes.
And so, like, as soon as someone gets me talking about that stuff, then I'm fine. Like, you're in your wheelhouse, right? So once you kind of get over that.
If I asked you about basket weaving, you're going to go, oh,
yeah, or like Facebook ads or whatever it may be. You're going to be fine. You're going to be in your wheelhouse. And also, like, if you line up those topics and questions to guide the conversation, then you're going to be prepared anyways. And the key really is to, answer confidently and kind of, you can even think of what possible questions are, possible answers are ahead of time, and making sure that you are, seeding your programs and that you have a lead magnet that people can go to afterwards, that you have a sales funnel afterwards to drive them down to convert, that you're sharing the content, that you've got a system to be able to leverage it, promote it, use it, and showcase it to say, yeah, I am a guest expert on all of these shows. I'm an authority on this. And so I think that's why some people shy away from promoting it, is partly because they're like, oh, I don't want to brag. I don't want to no, like, you have to showcase it to be the expert so that people perceive you as the expert, and you can charge what you're worth and grow your business. Like, if you're not serious about growing your business, then you don't do all of those things. But you kind of have to put on your big girl panties and just, fake it till you make it if you don't feel it.
And if you're new, nobody needs to know that you're new.
No, they don't.
And I have had a couple guests on, and both times they were people that I approached because I knew that they had a great topic and I wanted to talk to them about it, and they had never been on a podcast. So, I took my time before to really work with them a little bit, because more than anything, I wanted them to go, ooh, this was fun. I want to do it again. And now, granted, for first timers, an hour was probably daunting. So
Absolutely.
if you're new at this, look for the 15 to 20 minutes, the half hour at the most, and get comfortable with those, because then you're going to go longer and realize that it's not going to be perfect. And even episode 683, with its technical little glitches that we have had, it happens.
Life, right?
but your audience also knows that this is not the evening news production. It's not 60 Minutes. I mean, all of those various things. So they're not expecting it to be
No.
this polished thing. And if anything, it kind of endears them, because they're like,
Listen to real
hey,
people.
yeah, they're people whose headset comes apart and whose camera changes, just does all of these things. They sneeze in the middle. I mean, all sorts of stuff.
And if you are a guest, don't be afraid to ask for feedback afterwards.
Right.
Like, hey, I haven't done many of these. Like, is there any feedback that you
Right.
can give me of what was good, what was bad? I'll take the criticism.
Mhm.
It's better to know that stuff
Yep.
up front than like way down the road, right?
Yeah. And I mean, there have even been a couple of them where I have said, we can't do this right now because you don't have a good enough mic, or some things like that, and we'll kind of walk them through it. I've also talked with folks about their video, as I say that as my video is doing weirdness. I've got the lights, which look, they just changed again. This is just the strangest thing. But I also have two great big monitors that are putting out a lot of light that catches in my glasses, right? And this drives me nuts. That's one of the things
it drives me nuts too. I can see it.
Yep. And so, but I've also discovered that I change my monitors to night light settings. So for those who are watching, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to turn it off. Ew. I just turn,
yeah.
Isn't that horrible? I mean, I look like I could be on The Walking Dead. It gets very bluish. It's because this is this blue light that's coming. So when I turn it on, it's a much yellower, much more natural type of thing. So I've walked
little
people
tips.
Yeah. And there's certainly lots of resources out there. And Lyndsay is obviously a great resource. You've got fabulous tips on your website. You've got great resources there. So tell us a little bit more about how you work with people. First, tell us how they even find you, but then tell us what services you provide for folks.
You betcha. So they can go to smoothbusinessgrowth.com, and there is a free resources tab. Whether there's a guide there on how to launch a podcast, one on how to track and get more ROI out of guesting, and there's a guide on how to promote podcasts. So we help everyone from start to finish with podcasting. So launching, production, promotion, and then even just leveraging your podcast more, so that you don't have to do all the other elements of content marketing. You can just make podcasting your like one-stop content marketing shop, so to speak. And yeah, we've got the systems and we love doing it, and we want to make it fun for people.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, that's what it comes down to. If it's not fun, we're not going to do it. Whether you're hosting, I mean, like we said, that's why there's 38% that have had one podcast. They went, ooh, ick, I don't like this. And then they never do it again. And the problem is, it probably wouldn't take them a lot to learn to like it. But it's, if you're not enjoying being the guest,
it's kind of rough at the beginning, and then you kind of get in your flow.
Yep. Yeah. And you do figure out what you like and what you don't like. I don't do tons of editing. We're just talking. We say, we have cameras that go wonkadoodle. We might have audio that gets all these, I leave that in. That happens. Now I know people who edit to the,
I know. I'm like, that's crazy to me. That's
and it doesn't sound natural. It sounds very scripted, and it sounds like the evening news, right? So, but that's what they prefer. They think that's more professional. That's what feels better to them. Fine. That's great. But it just takes time. And, and like I said, it goes along merrily, and we're at almost episode 700, and it just goes wonkadoodle.
That's awesome.
So cool. Well, Lyndsay, again, tell people how they find you online.
Yep. They go to smoothbusinessgrowth.com, and then they can get everything that they need there, the services, the resources, social contacts, and don't be afraid to reach out. I love helping people.
Perfect. I love it. Well, do you have any final thoughts for us today?
I would say, don't be afraid of podcasting. Just start, and you will start to love it and love the connections. And it's such a huge strategy that will grow your business and build your authority. Just don't let fear hold you back.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a great discussion. Can't wait to do it again. I mean, this is something I think that we definitely need to do again. And so we will talk with Lyndsay Phillips again. I'm Deb Creer. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
See ya.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.